Anxiety can come in many different ways. There's obviously normal anxiety. That's stuff that we've all dealt with, and it usually comes when we're trying something new, or we're trying something hard or scary. Like when we're preparing for a test, or maybe going to the first day of school, or a new job, or going for your driver's license. Or when you're a young person and you're trying grown-up things for the first time, or maybe you're going to ask someone out on a date. All these things are normal anxiety. And these are anxieties that everyone faces. And they're anxieties that when you push through and you persevere, they end up building new tools, new strengths, and they create resilience, and you become a stronger person. But then there's overwhelming anxiety. And this is anxiety that comes usually from loss. The loss of a loved one, the loss of a job, the loss of a house, the loss of a business, the loss of a relationship. For me, it was the loss of my identity. And when this anxiety happens, it can be overwhelming. It feels like it's crushing you. The weight of the world is coming down upon you and it's compressing you. You have a hard time breathing, even thinking. Life can literally go crazy. There were many times I dealt with this anxiety. The first time I dealt with it was in the hospital. And what was happening was my left lung had collapsed and both my lungs were severely burned. I had tubes in both sides of my chest, so I draining food from them, and another tube in my mouth so I could breathe. And whenever they changed the sheets on my bed, or whenever they had to do certain bandage changes and roll me over to my left, I was unable to breathe. And the anxiety of being unable to breathe simply by being turned over, that drove me crazy. And I would literally fear, I would dread having something as simple as having my sheets changed. It drove me crazy because I knew I would not be able to breathe. Another time I dealt with anxiety, and that is when they would disconnect the ventilator from my mouth and bring me down to surgery. In that process of going down to surgery, there would be a bunch of nurses, and one of them would have to put a bag on my mouth and they'd give me breaths. And every once in a while they'd forget to give me a breath, or they wouldn't time it to when I wanted to breathe. I can tell you, I dreaded going for surgery because of that moment I knew was going to happen when the nurse was not going to be able to give me a breath. There in the hospital, I had many helpless days. I was completely immobile. I lost a third of my body weight. I was down to 112 pounds. I had other people's skin on me, protecting me from infection. I had tubes going through all parts of my body. I couldn't roll over. I couldn't sit up. I couldn't do anything. I was completely immobile, 100% helpless and dependent upon other people. And the thing I dreaded the most was going down for surgery. Because that's when I knew a nurse would forget to give me a breath. And there was no greater helpless feeling in this world than not being able to breathe. I can promise you that, because I know what true helplessness is. That is what I relate anxiety to my worst moment in the hospital, when I was unable to breathe. And what I found very interesting is when people are going through anxiety attacks, they often struggle to breathe. And when you can't breathe, it is the most helpless feeling in the world, and that is what extreme anxiety is. It's the most helpless feeling in the world, because your whole world is falling apart around you, and you're struggling to make sense of whatever it is that you lost or that's occurring that you do not have the tools for. So then how do you beat extreme anxiety? Some people say do mathematical equations in your head. which is really helpful if you think about it because it totally distracts you from what's going on. But I can promise you, when you're going through a panic attack, if you're not trained to do these things, you're probably not going to even think about doing a mathematical equation. So some of the best things you can do for anxiety is learn breathing techniques. Because if it is that you are feeling like you're being robbed of air, which is the most helpless feeling in the world, then learning new techniques to be able to regain that breath will take away what that anxiety is doing, robbing you of breathing. And you can start to come through the anxiety. I feel like anxiety is worse than anger, and it's worse than depression. Because anger will have you lash out, and depression will have you go against yourself. But anxiety, it will make you feel like there is no hope, that everything is lost. And that has got to be the hardest feeling in the world. So the next time you are dealing with just normal anxiety, persevere, push through, gain new tools, make yourself a better person. And when the extreme anxiety happens, when your world is falling apart because you lost something, learn to do those breathing techniques, do mathematical equations, find ways to bring yourself back to a grounded world. Because nobody likes to feel helpless. And that's what extreme anxiety does. It makes you feel like you're the most helpless you've ever been in your life. On the next Broken Pieces video, we're going to go take a look at suicide, which I have been waiting to share with you. But I've been waiting because I needed you to understand the bad day and anger and depression and anxiety and what brings people into that suicide, hopelessness, and darkness. And we're going to cover that on the next Broken Pieces. Until then, I hope you have a good day. And if you're not, it's okay to have a bad day. And whatever you do, learn to breathe. The breath of life is a gift.